Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I always say that because my listeners and the viewers are from many places around the world. Some of these places are actually seen morning while I'm in the afternoon, and so on. So I have to show respect as it relates to the time of day. I always say where the sun shines on you, right? I draw the the time that the world, the earth spins. I'd like to say welcome to those persons listening in Ukraine, Spain, Australia, part of Africa, St. Lucia, Switzerland. Data showing us through our platforms that those persons have been listening extensively. Jamaica as well, the United States, naturally. I am Canute White, Dr. Canute White, and you're listening, watching Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to a very important guest. He will tell us a bit about his business, but before that, he will be talking to us about a number of philosophical um, challenges, situation you may, and things like atheism, theism, and he will be differentiating love, morals, and other concepts that will be important to us. We're gonna chat, I like philosophical conversation. He will explain to us what that is as well. But we're going to be talking to John Lee, and I'm going to be letting John Lee in. John Lee, how are you doing, sir? Where are you from? Where are you reaching out from?
I'm in Pittsburgh now,
Oh,
doctor.
cool. I love it.
I'm
I
at the
love it.
park. Yeah, at the
I love
park
it.
now.
I love it, John. But let me ask you, who is John Lee? Sounds like those karate show that we always watch, Bruce Lee and so on.
Yeah,
Who's
my
John
name's
Lee?
pretty common. Yeah.
Right,
Well,
right.
I'm I'm a husband. I'm a father of a 5-year-old. I am a product manager, software product manager by day. That's my day job. I have a small side business
Mm-hmm,
called custommobile.app. So I'm a founder of a small business also
mm-hmm,
that makes mobile apps for content creators and podcasters.
right.
I'm also a lover of philosophy. So I love thinking through big questions, interesting questions. It's not something that I don't think I've chose it. It chose me. It's one of those things where you don't choose your interests, right? They choose you.
Cool. Yeah.
So I love thinking through some of these big questions, and I hope we'll have a great conversation today.
Yeah, I hope so too. All right, let's start with your childhood. I'm sure that there might be a number of philosophical aspect to your childhood, but let's start with that. John's
Yeah.
childhood. Hmm.
I grew up in New York, in New York City, in a borough called Queens. And then we moved out to Long Island when I was 6 years old. And I grew up in Long Island for the most of my uh, young adult years. Went to college in upstate New York, so mainly from New York. I lived a couple of years abroad in South Korea after university, taught English there, worked in the foster care system there, and then came back to the US for grad school in Massachusetts. We're in Pittsburgh now. We moved here 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, for a new job here, and we love the little city here, and we're probably going to settle here for the rest of uh, maybe our lives. So yeah, we love it here in Pittsburgh.
I love it, love it, love it. Tell me though, your childhood must have brought some sort of inspirational message into your adulthood. What is that message, or those messages that you see as inspirational and can share with others?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I'm actually going through a writing exercise recently,
Hmm.
writing about my past. So
Yeah.
writing, it's kind of like writing an autobiography of my past to understand the different themes that that have happened. I think one of the themes I've written about recently is how life gives us second and third chances, multiple chances to redo and relive some
Hmm.
of those periods in our childhood that we didn't get to do properly.
Yeah.
So every child, every person grows up with advantages and disadvantages. But I saw in my own life, like it's not just like you get one chance to do something or one chance to develop a particular skill or develop personally also.
Yeah.
God gives us many different chances through different periods of life. And especially now, I've got a 5-year-old now. What I've realized is having children, gives us another opportunity to live through our childhoods
uh,
through them, right? You get to live through these things again through another person. And so there are these repeated opportunities to grow up that I found really interesting to think about.
yeah,
So maybe for your listeners, don't feel like just because you missed out on something when you were young that you won't have many opportunities to do that again in the future, in the present.
yeah.
And we're all always growing, always learning, always becoming fuller human beings. So yeah, I think that mindset has
Yeah,
been helpful.
that sounds good. And as you talk, I recall in psychology because I'm in psychology. In psychology, we talk about regression and progression. And sometimes that childhood um, period that you believe is enjoyable, you tend to want to regress to it. You know, we tend to want to regress to it because no doubt about it, we tend to want to grow up when we were children. But when we look back as an adult, we say, as adults, we say, "Hey, I wish I was a child again." In most cases, it depends, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that, John.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've also I've also seen people tend to regress toward those periods in their childhood where they experienced trauma and where they didn't have an opportunity to develop properly. So
Mhm.
we have a family friend who's diagnosed with very severe depression,
Mhm.
and through many months and years of therapy, um, it seems like the root of his depression has a lot to do with a particular period in his childhood
Yeah.
where, well, he went to boarding school as a very young person,
Mhm.
like a 6 year old. And that's kind of where it began. But yeah, there is a tendency to like stop. I
Yeah.
think, I don't know what it's called in psychoanalysis, but it's you almost pause or stop developing from the point of trauma forward. And so even as an adult, a
Mhm.
lot of people struggle with trauma from their childhood and they kind of go back and they haven't been able to grow beyond that trauma until it's dealt with, I think, until it's examined, understood, and learned from.
Mhm.
Then they can begin to grow beyond that point and continue their personal development. So that, yeah, that's something that I've seen also.
Right, right. They tend to go back to regress in order to, as you say, to deal with it, to have closure, and you know
Mhm.
that's to go. But we love to talk about philosophical conversation. We're gonna be having some of those. What do you describe as philosophical conversation? You know, what do you?
I think these are questions and conversations about big questions of like why. The why questions tend to be philosophical conversations,
Mm-hmm,
but also questions about the underlying assumptions that all of us or many of us are holding all the time. So
mm-hmm,
I love conversations that question the assumptions that we're taking for granted. I
yeah.
love those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, yeah. And John, we love to talk about justice. We want justice. You hear that a lot.
Mhm.
In my country where I'm from, Jamaica, you hear that a lot. You hear that here in the United States, perhaps tacitly at times. But
Sure.
you know, what is really injustice? And is it a feeling really, or is it that it exists?
Yeah, that's a great question. So personally, I think every single human being lives as if justice is a real thing. Like
Mm-hmm,
it is a fact. We feel wronged when people wrong us. We feel like we've been a victim of injustice.
mm-hmm,
So I don't think there's a human being on the planet, unless you're mentally unwell, um, that doesn't live as if justice is a real thing.
yeah.
But I think um, the only foundation for justice being a real thing, like a fact of reality,
Mm-hmm,
is if there is a God who
mm-hmm,
gives an objective moral law. So if there is a God and he is the author of the moral law and that moral law applies to every human being, it's not something created by us, it's not something subjective, it's not just a feeling, it's a fact that we have to obey and we can disobey, we can break that law. In that perspective, it makes sense. Our feelings make sense
yeah.
if justice is a real thing. But as I thought through this, I thought
Mm-hmm,
in an atheistic worldview where there is no God, then I couldn't think of an equally sound foundation for justice being a fact.
Yeah.
In that perspective, I think justice would just be a feeling. It would be a feeling that I've been wronged,
Mm-hmm.
but without an objective. Um, there's nothing outside of my own feelings
Yeah.
to point to.
Yeah. And you know, John, you talk about objectivity and subjectivity for that matter as it relates to injustice. But
Mm.
how does that relate? Or does what you have said relate to the justice for some, relative justice, I'd like to call it? Justice for the man upstairs, and what is justice for the man upstairs, different from justice from the man downstairs. You understand? There's no equity in justice.
When you say man upstairs, man downstairs, do you mean God and man
Oh
or
no,
something else?
let me clarify that.
Mm.
Different social class. Let's look at it from a
Mm.
social class perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
Social strata. Yeah.
Oh, I think there's only one standard of justice. There's no double standard. From my perspective, there is one moral law. It's objective, outside of all human beings, regardless of your class. So there's God's law,
Right.
and you will break God's law whether you're the man upstairs or the man downstairs. It doesn't matter what class you are. There is an objective standard that can be obeyed and that can be broken. That's my perspective.
Right, right. I love that, John. I love that. We need to clarify this thing called justice. But free will,
Mm.
rationality, love, and morality. How do you work around those equations? That equation, and talk to me about that.
Yeah. This is something I've thought about quite recently, actually. So it's not fully formed, but I'll try to explain some of my thought process.
Hmm.
Um, as I thought about all those concepts, rationality, purpose, really, self-worth,
Hmm.
also called value, meaning, a sense of meaning. What I
Yeah.
found at the bottom was love. So
Hmm.
this is the way I picture it. So I believe in a God that loves me.
Right.
And love, by its nature, is directional. So
Mm.
I love my son. That doesn't mean I want good things for him only. I
Yeah.
also want him to become a good person. There's a directionality to my love, there's a purpose embedded in my love. So, again, going back to because God loves me, therefore, he has a purpose for me.
Hmm.
And that purpose is not something I've created, it's a purpose that he's given me from the outside. So,
Yeah.
purpose is objective, love is objective. Because he loves me, that's where my self worth comes, that's where my value comes. The
Hmm.
price of something is determined by how much people want it, right? Demand determines the price of any object in the market.
Hmm.
So my self worth is determined by the degree that God loves me. So there's the foundation for my self worth is also grounded in God's love. His purpose
Yeah.
uh, is embedded in God's love. And because there is a purpose for my life, now everything that I do, everything that I experience, think, and feel becomes
Yeah.
meaningful, meaningful to that purpose. And the example I thought of was in any story, you have a hero.
Yeah.
They're going to go on a journey, and there is a purpose to that journey. Um, if that hero, that character, doesn't have a purpose, everything that happens to him on that journey becomes meaningless. They're just random experiences, random events. There is no meaning until and unless there is a purpose
Hmm.
for that character, and the journey becomes meaningful toward the purpose. So the purpose is necessary for meaning to exist, for meaning to be valid, and not just a feeling, but a fact. So that's how I kind of tied all those concepts together in my head. It all starts with love, and God's love in particular seems
Yeah.
to be the bedrock, the beginning for my self worth, my purpose, the meaning of my life. Oh, and the last thing is like morality. We talked about morality, right? God's
Yeah. Yeah.
morality.
Right.
There's God's law. God's law is very simple. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And I was thinking about that and I realized, whoa, maybe morality is the map. It is the way for me to achieve my purpose. So
Hmm.
to the degree that I can follow the moral law,
Yeah.
I will achieve God's purpose for my life. And so that's the way I fit all these kind of concepts together in something that really satisfied me
Yeah.
intellectually. What do you think of that?
Yeah. You see, I'm in psychology, so I'm going to take a twist to that in asking you this question,
Mm,
because there are some persons who believe that, hey, I do not, they do not worth anything again based on the experiences that they have in life. You know, they might get suicidal or so. Um,
mm,
so they actually change, I think, the purpose of life. Oh, my
mm,
purpose in life is perhaps non-existent, or my purpose has
mm.
been fulfilled, or something, right? um how do you relate that to what you have just said, which
Yeah.
I agree with it, I support what you have said, but looking at it from the perspective of persons who have changed their self-worth, I believe that they have no worth, so they're changing their
Mm,
purpose and just don't
yeah.
want to live.
I think if I were talking to anyone who's going through depression, and I just got off the phone with a friend who's going through
Okay.
depression. So, it- from what I can tell, the depression comes in part from losing one's purpose, so losing a sense of one's purpose.
Yeah.
And so, whatever the therapist or whatever the psychiatrist or psychologist can do to help that person begin to set goals. So, goals and purpose, I think, are the same thing. Begin to set goals for yourself and for your future. That goes a long way in producing positive emotion. So, I listen to a lot of Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Hmm.
He's a clinical psychologist, and he always talks about people feel positive emotion when they're working toward a goal.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what the goal is. If you feel like you're making progress toward the goal, you're going to feel positive emotion. So if you don't have a goal, you're not going to feel positive emotion, and you don't want to be in that place. So
Hmm.
I don't think people can live very long without having a purpose, i.e.,
Yeah.
without having a goal. So get a goal, um, get a goal that will last, that is not going to fall apart on you.
Hmm.
Ultimately, I think the strongest goal one can have, the most foundational bedrock goal one can have is, um, I think, is God's law. It's that moral
Yeah.
command. It's to
Yeah.
love God, love your neighbor. It's a generic call to
Yeah.
every human being.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know my particular purpose in life. Like I don't know what God's particular purpose is for me, but I have His general command, and I believe to the degree that I follow that command, that moral law, to that degree, I will fulfill my particular purpose. For me,
Yeah.
that's a great relief to not have to know
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And He will show me what I need to know, when I need to know it to take the next step. For me, that's
Yeah.
been very healthy.
You know, I love that, John, because this thing about setting goals, redirecting your goals, then create purpose for you, and it perhaps shut you out of this tendency to not to live, so to speak. All right, morality. We talk about morality. You just mentioned it as it relates to what you have said about God, you know, morality and so on. Morality, is it objective or obligatory in nature?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it already. I believe it's
Right.
objective because it's outside of us. I believe it's grounded in God's command. Um, it's obligatory. It's something that um, we are obliged to obey. We
Right.
feel it, right? Why do we feel guilty?
Hmm.
Well, is it because is guilt again just a feeling, or is it a fact? Are you actually guilty when when you break the moral law? Is the state of your standing uh,
Hmm.
with regard to justice, with regard to God? Are you actually guilty from a like a mode perspective, or is
Yeah.
it just a feeling? And I believe, yeah, people feel guilty because they are guilty, because they have broken an actual moral law,
Hmm.
um, and that gives me hope because that means I can do something about that, right?
Yeah.
If you don't believe that, if you believe that guilt is just a feeling, good luck trying to stop feeling guilty.
Hmm.
Yeah, how are you gonna do that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I thought about this while we talk. You know, this thing about not everything that is illegal is
Mhm.
immoral, and not everything that
Mhm.
is immoral is illegal. Um,
Sure.
for instance, this thing about promiscuity, right?
Mhm.
It's not illegal. Well, in some jurisdiction, I suspect, but it can be considered immoral.
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
this thing about smoking, drugs and marijuana and so on. In
Mm,
most jurisdiction, it might be illegal, but it's not immoral in norm.
mm.
So talk to me about that concept of that I just mentioned as it relates to the objectivity and obligatory morality.
Yeah, I think that's right. Um, Something is legal or illegal in our country based on the laws of that land. The laws of the land determine what's legal or illegal, but that's not going to be the same as the moral law, which is above any land, any jurisdiction. I think, yeah, legal national laws evolve. They do change um, based on what the people feel is right or wrong at a given point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think my perspective right now on the moral law is it doesn't change. It's not
Right.
relative to human feeling or a consensus feeling about it. And it's quite simple. I mean, my understanding of the moral law is very simple. It's love God, love your neighbor. So that, from what I can see, is a constant. It's
Yeah.
universal. It's not going to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think to the degree that our human laws align with the moral law, I think it's getting closer and closer to what it's meant to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. I once wrote an article for the newspaper back in Jamaica, Jamaica Observer, I will say, and it was entitled "Rightness or Wrongness Relative to the Individual."
Mm,
So my view is that what is right, what is wrong, is usually relative to me, relative to you. That's my thing. I once said
mm,
that. So yeah.
mm,
But what are the relationships between love, value, purpose, and meaning? You might have touched on that a little, yeah. But
mm.
do you have anything else to say on that to make it clear?
Yeah, I think again, maybe just to reiterate, I find it fascinating that at the bottom of all those really fascinating concepts is love. Like love is at the bottom of all of it. And without the love there, the love of God,
Yeah,
what else could hold up ideas like my life has a purpose or my life has a meaning or my worth, I have self-worth. Like what other idea could be a foundation if not the love of God? So for me, I found it very satisfying. It all kind of fit together for me nicely.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd encourage people to think about that.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Happiness is something that I am not sure my view on it because we're having this philosophical conversation. My view is
Mm,
that we keep pursuing happiness, and
mm,
I suspect that no one is never entirely happy.
mm,
There's always a portion of happiness that you have in your corner, not a
mhm.
100%. What
Yeah.
are the requirements? Question to you: What are the requirements for happiness?
Yeah, I think happiness, I think you touched on it just now. Happiness seems to me cannot be a goal in itself. Happiness seems to me to be a side effect.
Mhm.
So going back to that idea of living out my purpose, to the degree that I am following God's moral law, that I am fulfilling God's purpose for me, that I should feel happy. I should kind of like wake up from what I'm doing and realize, gosh, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I am happy. And then I should go back to doing, fulfilling my purpose in life. I think happiness is a signal that you are fulfilling your purpose. And if you're not feeling happy, maybe that's also a signal that you're not living into the purpose, into
Okay.
your purpose. So it's like a side effect. It's a signal. It's not a goal to be pursued in itself. Um, I think that's what I was thinking about happiness. Yeah. I think a lot of us are trying to pursue happiness. Even
Yeah.
in our constitution, I think
Yeah.
it has something like the
Yeah.
pursuit of happiness, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's misleading. Yeah.
That's misreading, but again, it speaks to how the Constitution proposes us to think that hey, happiness is something to pursue,
Yeah.
and not to really get
One
on.
more thing I wanted to
Yeah.
touch on. You mentioned, yeah, I don't think anyone is ever 100% happy. I think you're right.
Yeah.
As I get older, I think I'm realizing this more and more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As one gets older, there will, because suffering is a part of life, and as you get older, you see more suffering, you experience more suffering. All happiness is tinged with sadness. There's always things to be sad about in the world.
Yeah.
But the great thing about, and I think that makes that happiness more real, more full. This idea of like a 100% ecstatic happiness, I don't think that's a mature kind of
Right.
happiness or an emotion. I think the more mature emotion is rejoicing, while at the same time grieving. There's some combination there that I think
Yeah.
can be achieved. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that. I love the talk. You're listening to Canyouth Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I'm Dr. Canute White. You're listening also to John Lee. I'm sitting in with John Lee, a very interesting philosophical conversationalist. And I'm going to ask him, what are the arguments for theism and atheism? Talk to me about that, John.
Yeah, so this is, I think, the question that got me into philosophy maybe 10 years ago. I started watching videos and debates
Mm-hmm.
between theists and atheists. I think one of the arguments that hits home for me recently, most
Mm-hmm.
powerfully, is this rational argument. So let me see if I can spell that out.
Yeah.
Um, I think in order for us to be rational, we need to have free will. So we need to be able to make free choices, real, actual choices for any belief to be rational. So we say a belief is rational if we believe it based on good reasons and evidence. We're choosing to believe something because of the evidence. So
Yeah.
choice is involved there. If you don't have choice, if the naturalists are right, if the materialists are right, and we are just matter in motion,
Mm-hmm.
our choices, the choices we think we're making are illusions, then by that definition, our beliefs are irrational. They
Yeah.
wouldn't be rational. So that's a very cursory kind of overview of the rational argument. But I think free will um, is a requirement for rationality.
Yeah.
And I don't see room for free will in a materialistic universe. So if all there is matter in motion, matter
Yeah.
obeys the laws of nature, the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are not the kind of things that you can disobey. They are descriptive. They just describe the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
So on that worldview, on the materialistic worldview, there wouldn't be free will, and
Yeah.
therefore we wouldn't be rational. We would be determined to think every thought, to feel every emotion, to do
Yeah.
every action. We'd be robots.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I don't believe that. I don't think anyone lives that way. I don't think anyone feels that they are robots, that they're not making real choices. Our societies are designed with the assumption that we are free agents. Our justice system is designed with the assumption that
Yeah.
people have free choice and they're making right and wrong decisions, and you are guilty or not guilty and can be punished
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or freed based on your freedom. So I think the theistic worldview, which has God as the creator, he as the free consciousness, the agent, he
Yeah.
creating us as free agents and
Mm-hmm.
in his image, also to be able
Yeah.
to make real decisions. I think that fits better into my lived experience
Yeah.
than the view that we are simply robots, matter in motion,
Mm.
determined by the laws of physics.
Yeah. That's interesting though. But this thing about 1 minute gratification. We make a decision because we want to be gratified now instead of looking at the long term consequences. That is something that is, challenging as well, John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're talking about immediate gratification
Yeah,
versus
right. Yeah, immediate. Yeah,
yeah,
right. That's
versus like
that's
what's
challenging.
mm-hmm.
Go ahead. You
Mm-hmm.
want to say something on that?
Oh no, I was just I forget the other word for it. What's the opposite of immediate gratification? It's like sacrificing now for
Right.
long-term gain.
Without that
Yeah.
language, yeah, that's
Mm.
it. But that's something that we need to understand. We just getting that quick gratification without looking at the long term consequences can be crucial, because the long term consequences can be more painful. Well, can be painful, extremely painful. So that's another thing. But John, this thing about
Mm.
gender, I this thing about I'm sorry about that. That's John is the Jamaican radio station. Let me
Mm.
apologize. It's
No
cool.
problem.
Right? It's clean. That's Mellow FM. Mellow FM in Jamaica just butt into my my thing, right? And
Mm.
that was Bergerman, DJ, right? But that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. But John, the this thing about gender,
Mm.
gender dysphoria,
Yeah.
right? I want to look at it from the perspective of I want to look at it from the perspective of the LGBTQ community. But let
Mm-hmm.
me let me try to define it for a while. And it's a sense of unease that a person may have become may have recognized this mismatch between their biological sex and their gender identity. And this
Right.
indeed
Yeah.
can cause a sort of depression, anxiety for the
Mm.
individual, and it has
Yeah.
an harmful impact on their life. Talk
Yeah.
to me about the presupposition of that
Yeah.
underlying gender dysphoria.
So I don't know why I started thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, but it struck me like that, even that sentence, I was born in the wrong body. Like if you could boil it down, that may be the sentence, right? I was born in the wrong body. If I'm maybe I identify as male, but I was born in the female body, or vice versa. As I thought about that statement, I realized there's an assumption being made there. The assumption there is that I am not the same as my body. That's the first assumption.
Right. Hmm.
So what am I? And then I am something immaterial. So my body is material. I am something immaterial. Let's just say spirit for lack of a better word. Like I am a spirit.
Hmm.
My body is made of matter, and I was born in the wrong body.
Hmm.
That also kind of assumes, wait a minute. So you were a spirit, and that spirit was kind of implanted in a body in the womb.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, that's another assumption. Okay, so there's a pre-existing I spirit that gets implanted
Hmm.
in a physical body. The third assumption that I thought of was, well, there's also the assumption that I, the spirit, am gendered. So how can a spirit that does not have a body have a gender? Because gender seems to be a social construct,
Right.
if
Hmm.
if anything, if not a biological construct as well.
Hmm.
It seems to be related to the material world. So how does an immaterial spirit, how is an immaterial spirit gendered? So there were some of these presuppositions I was thinking about. I was like, has anyone analyzed some of these assumptions in the statement, I was born in the wrong body?
Right.
And if so, like those are some really interesting questions. Like we should
Hmm.
be talking about, if I'm a spirit, well, what does that mean? Like, what's the justification for that belief? And
Hmm.
yeah, so I found those questions really fascinating, even more so than the fact that some people feel like they were born in the wrong body.
Wow. Wow. That and that can be so depressive. I would note, right? And very challenging for a number of persons. And there's this saying that most of us were born as female. This whole genetic makeup, and then we shall sort of shift into male, or stay in female form. I mean, it's a whole lot of talk, John. So I
Yeah.
just throw that out there because it's all about philosophy, right? And you're
No,
listening.
yeah.
You can
There's a
just
whole philosophy of identity that's
right.
being assumed
Hmm.
in that whole phenomenon. But I
Yeah.
think those questions are fascinating, and I don't think they've been examined. I mean, I'm only a layperson myself, so
Yeah. A lot of research
yeah.
needs to be done on a lot of things, but that's
Mhm.
important. You're listening to Canyouth Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Just now you heard Mellow FM from Jamaica, and that was Bergerman, doing his thing, very entertaining DJ back in Kingston, Jamaica, Mellow FM. All right, John. Um, your thing, custom mobile app.
Mm.
Talk to me about that company.
Yeah, it's a small agency actually that I started in January of this year. It's just me and a co-founder, and we make custom mobile apps for podcasters. It's very simple. In the past, it was too expensive, and I don't think a lot of podcasters considered having their own mobile app that their listeners could download on the app stores. But we've made it so it's affordable and accessible for anyone. Our plans start at $25 a month for one show,
Okay.
and at that price, you can have your own Canyouth exploration app on the app stores for anyone
Yeah.
anywhere in the world to download
Mm.
and listen to your content, but also more importantly, to engage you, the creator, and ultimately convert to become a customer. So the
Cool.
purpose of the app is just like the purpose of your website.
Hmm.
It's to engage your audience and convert them to becoming customers so you can monetize your show. That's
Okay.
the business value of a mobile app. Um, yeah, and we've started in January. We're a small company. We have about 50 clients so far. We're hoping to keep growing and break even by the end of the year and continue to grow slowly and steadily.
Okay.
But it's a small operation. We don't do any marketing. It's all by word of mouth and me talking to
Oh,
podcasters like you. So
yeah.
if any listeners want to come and they mention your show, we can give them their first month free so they can
Okay.
try it risk free, have an app made. And if they like it, they can continue. If not, yeah, we can say goodbye.
Yeah, that sound great. So, how do they get in touch with you as it relates to your business?
Yeah, they
I
can
I
find
am
us. Mhm.
something is actually scrolling across the screen here, the Twitter, but I want you to say it out because there are person listening from their favorite podcast platform,
Sure.
Apple Podcasts, etc.
Yeah, they can find us on our Twitter account, Pod Squad Inc. INC, or just come to our website. Custommobile.app is the website. You'll find everything you need to see there. And we hope to be in touch with your audience soon.
Hmm. How about Instagram? I have something here.
We're on Instagram as well. I don't post on there as much, but
Okay.
yeah, you can find us at custommobile.app on Instagram also.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. Hey, John Lee. All right. I mean, so nice talking to you, man. And I love the sort of philosophical things that you have brought across the floor. And it's very interesting, especially as you relate to morality and love and rationality. It's really interesting. Continue to do the good work that you have been doing. I am sure that persons will reach out to you not only as it relates to your philosophical views, but also as it relates to custom mobile um, app, right? And
Thank you. Mm,
look, John, I'm from Jamaica, and
mm,
even though I live here, reaching out to you from Miramar, Florida. But this thing about the British being British trained, I was
mm,
British trained in terms of university,
mhm,
here as well. It's a split here and in Jamaica, British trained. So this thing about mobile, and you understand the concept. We might say custom mobile. Do you say
mm.
custom mobile? Or you say custom mobile? Um,
I don't know. I
put you on
say
the spot.
maybe custommobile.app. Mm,
Yeah, I put you on the spot there, right? But
mhm.
that's how it is. But thanks for joining me and Canyouth Exploration, your topic in the podcast, and I will talk to you again. It's a network, so I will talk with you. All right, John, you take care.
Thank you, Doctor. It's a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you. Bye bye. So that was John Lee. I want you to touch base with John Lee to find his business, custom mobile app, on Instagram. You'll also get him on his web page, um, his website at www.custommobile.com, and you will custom mobile that app, right? And you will also get him on Twitter. I want you to touch base with John, and if you're a podcaster like me, John will will have something for you to enhance your capacity out there, your capability out there, right? As a podcaster, he has said so much about philosophical issues that many of us had perhaps thought about, but have not gone through it as detailed as John had mentioned. Rationality, love, and morality. He had talked about morality. Is it objective or obligatory in nature? And relationship between love, value, purpose, and meaning. So I want you to engage that. Guys, we're still in a pandemic. Remember the social distance thing. Wash your hands as well. The hygiene thing. And also the vaccine. Wear a mask. And the vaccine. I'm not saying you should take it, but I'm encouraging you to take it. I have done my vaccine, a Pfizer. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, Pfizer. But you should really um take your vaccine so that we can go back out there and do the things we used to do in 2019 before World Health Organization actually declare COVID-19 a pandemic, actually the 13th of March 2020. And I have written a book called Oriental Ghost Tale of the Coronavirus. You can get that on Amazon. Go there and pick up your copy, right? And it's very important that you learn about the advent of the coronavirus way back then. You will get so many information in that book, statistics, early statistics, that we have been following. It's really a document of the news and other um, and things that persons have been saying as it relates to the pandemic. So it's a documentation. You need to get it and see what had gone. I don't, we had experience earlier in the pandemic. We might forget. So just buy your copy and read. So thanks for watching Canute Exploration. I am Dr. Canute White.